All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive
Yeah,
into some fascinating concepts.
absolutely.
Um, every now and then we stumble across a passage
Mm-hmm.
and it sparks something,
Yeah.
and we gotta unpack it.
Gotta dig
You gotta
in.
dig in.
Yeah.
And today is no exception. We're gonna be diving into an excerpt about Satan. And
Oh,
now, before you click that next button,
right.
this isn't about religion in the way you might think. This is about power.
Yes.
This is about choice and what it means to be
It's
human.
about the human condition.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how this excerpt just throws down the gauntlet in the very first few lines. Like it starts by basically saying, hey, guess what? The creator,
Yeah.
total authority
Yeah.
over everything, good, evil, you name it.
And that's what's so intriguing, right? It's this bold statement about ultimate power that immediately grabs your attention.
Right. And it's like, okay, we're dealing with some heavy concepts here.
Yeah.
But then it goes on and it
Yeah.
brings up Adam and Eve. And it talks about their choice, the whole friendship with the world thing.
And it frames that choice as this pivotal moment of separation.
Separation,
Yep.
exactly. Separation from the creator. So it's not just about acknowledging this ultimate power, but also understanding our place and our choices in relation to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting because this excerpt connects it to this universal human experience, right? That pull between what we desire in the world and that sense of something bigger than ourselves.
Like that classic struggle, right? Do we follow our immediate desires or do we seek a higher purpose?
And the text doesn't shy away from the consequences of those choices either.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Yeah. It comes right out and
Mhm.
says that this pattern of choosing, quote unquote, the world over, well, whatever that higher power might be,
Mm.
it leads to rebellion and ultimately it leads to suffering.
It's almost like this idea that we're constantly tripping ourselves up, like we keep making the same mistakes over and over again throughout history.
You do, and we see it everywhere.
Yeah.
So with all this talk of consequences and rebellion, it makes you wonder, who are we really rebelling against? I mean, this excerpt is about Satan, but it feels like it's pointing to something much deeper, don't you think?
It definitely is, because it's not so much about a literal being with horns and a tail, but more about a force, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
A force of opposition. It's the embodiment of those choices that steer us away from what we value, from our principles, you know?
So it's not necessarily some external evil, but something within us?
Exactly. That internal struggle we all feel when we're faced with a difficult decision. It's that pull to choose the easy path, even when we know deep down it's not the right one.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
that's a powerful way to put it. So if the real adversary isn't some red dude with a pitchfork,
Right.
but rather something within us that makes you really stop and think, what is that friendship with the world in your own life?
Mhm.
What choices are you grappling with right now? And are those choices leading you towards or away from your own sense of purpose?
That's the question, isn't it?
It really is.
Mhm.
And with that, we'll leave you to ponder that, dear listeners.
Food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.
See you then.
This deep dive, wow, this source. Who is Satan?
Mm.
It really makes you think about Satan in a whole new way.
Yeah, it's really something.
Definitely not what I was expecting.
Right from the beginning, it kind of throws you off balance a little. It calls Satan the enemy, which, okay, not surprising. But then it immediately connects that with the world. It says the enemy is the world.
It almost sounds like it's saying the world itself is evil.
I don't think it's saying the world is inherently bad. No, it's more like it's warning us about getting so caught up in worldly stuff, the desires, the values, that we lose that connection with something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, like giving in to temptation, the apple in the Garden of Eden, all that.
Exactly. The source even quotes a verse from James. Friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim. It's like it's saying you have to choose. You can't be friends with both.
It's like that saying, you can't serve two masters.
Mm.
You have to pick a side. And this source really dives into what happens when you choose the world, so to speak, as your master,
Mm-hmm.
and uses Adam in the Garden of Eden as the first example.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how the source points out that Adam, even surrounded by, paradise, he still felt alone. It even quotes the verse that says, "For the man there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart." And it makes you wonder, even in the Garden of Eden, Adam felt that loneliness.
It's like that need for connection, to have someone or something that really understands you, that gets you.
Right, that counterpart. It's a deep human need to feel like you belong.
So is it talking about like a romantic relationship, or is it something more than that?
It's deeper than just romance. It's about those times when you felt truly seen, truly understood. Maybe it's with someone you love or in nature, or even during prayer or meditation. That feeling of connection, that's what it's getting at.
And it's saying that when we don't have that, we try to fill that emptiness with other things, like buying stuff, chasing success, even jumping from one relationship to another.
Exactly. And that's when we're most likely to make choices that, well, they don't really lead us where we want to go. Choices that take us further away from that true connection we crave.
So in Adam's case, trying to fill that void led him to sin, which the source then connects to death.
And this is where that whole idea of original sin comes into play.
Yeah, that's always been a tough one for me to wrap my head around.
It's a complex theological concept, and there are a lot of different interpretations. But this source seems to be saying that Adam's choice to put his own desires first, to separate himself from the divine, that was the turning point.
So it's not about, like, literally biting into an apple. It's about something much deeper.
It's about that choice to prioritize the self over the divine. And the source seems to be drawing a direct connection between that choice and all the suffering and death we see in the world.
So we've got separation, temptation, sin, death.
Heavy stuff.
It's a lot. And just when you think you're starting to understand, the source throws this curveball. It says, who NW is the Satan? I did not see any wars in the heavens. I did not see any rebellion in the skies. Wait, hold on. No fallen angels. No epic battle between good and evil.
I know, right? This is where the source really challenges that traditional view of Satan. It even quotes Isaiah 45:7, quote, making peace and creating evil. I do all these.
Is this saying that God created evil?
It's a challenging idea, for sure. But it might be pointing toward something more profound, like maybe good and evil aren't two totally separate things. Maybe they're both part of a bigger picture.
Okay, I think I get what you're saying. It's like maybe we don't always understand why bad things happen, but even what we perceive as evil, it serves a purpose, like in some grand cosmic plan that's way bigger than us.
Exactly. Like looking at a tapestry from the back, it's just a mess of threads. You can't make sense of it. But from the front, it's this beautiful, intricate work of art.
So if we're not seeing Satan as this external force of evil, then who or what is the source pointing to? Who is Satan in this new way of looking at things?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. And to answer it, the source takes us to the book of Job. So there's the scene in Job where Satan shows up before God and the sons of Elohim are there too, and this is where it gets interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The word usually translated as God, Elohim, it doesn't always mean God in like the singular sense. Depending on what's going on around it, it can also mean other heavenly beings or even human judges.
Wait, so when Job was talking about the sons of Elohim, he could be talking about regular people.
That's one way to look at it. And this
Yeah.
source seems to be into that idea a lot. It's like, it's asking, what if humans can be like the embodiment of what we normally think of as Satan?
You mean like literally evil?
Not evil exactly, more like that role of the accuser. Think about people who blame other people without trying to understand. People who don't have any compassion.
Oh, okay, I see. So like those sons of Elohim who were there while Job was being tested, they were kind of like Job's friends, but instead of helping him, they were judging him. They didn't make things any easier on him.
Exactly. And the source is saying that by doing that, they were kind of being like the accuser. They added to Job's suffering by blaming him and doubting him.
So it's less about demons and angels now, and more about how people can act like accusers to each other, showing that dark side of human nature.
It's like the source is holding up this mirror, you know? It's making us look at ourselves and realize that darkness isn't just something out there. It's inside all of us, too.
It's in how we treat each other, how we judge without understanding. Man, it makes you think about times you've done that, you know?
Yeah.
It makes you want to be more careful.
Exactly. When we get all wrapped up in judging and being right, we forget that everyone is connected. We lose sight of that spark of something bigger than ourselves.
And then the source takes that whole accuser thing even further. Is it connected to original sin somehow?
Kind of, yeah. It connects it to the people who condemned Jesus. Remember when he said, "Is it not written in your own Torah?" I said, "You are Elohim." If he called them Elohim, to whom the word of Elohim came, and it is impossible for the scripture to be broken, do you say of him whom the Father set apart and sent into the world, "You are blaspheming because I said, I am the son of Elohim"?
So it's like it's saying that judging and condemning, being totally disconnected from God, like in Job's story, is the same thing that happened with Jesus.
That's it. It's saying we judge and condemn because we're blinded by our own egos and what we want. We don't even recognize the divine even when it's right in front of us.
It's like it's built into us to see what's wrong with other people. to focus on their flaws instead of realizing we're all connected.
And that need to focus on the negative, to be the one who blames, it all comes back to that separation, that
Yeah.
choice to put ourselves and our desires above a connection to something bigger.
So this source is saying the real Satan isn't some outside force. It's that voice inside us that judges and separates.
Yeah, it's not about saying one person or group is the devil. It's about seeing this thing that all humans do. It's about looking at ourselves and seeing how often we might be feeding that cycle of blaming and dividing.
And the big question is, how do we get out of that cycle? It's like we're at a crossroads. We can be the accuser and keep that separation going, or we can try to find a different way.
And this source seems to think finding that different way starts with seeing the accuser in ourselves. Noticing when we're judging, when we want to blame, when we push people away.
We're all carrying that potential for darkness, right? That echo of separation. But if we can see it, does that mean we can choose to act differently?
Yeah, I think that's the whole point. It's not about being perfect and never judging. That's impossible. We're human. It's more about being aware.
It's like we can at least try to catch ourselves judging, question it, maybe even laugh at ourselves a little, because sometimes those judgments are ridiculous when you really think about it.
Exactly. And when you can step back from that voice that's always judging, that's when things can really change.
It's about making room for compassion for ourselves and other people.
We're so hard on ourselves. We expect perfection, and it just keeps that cycle of judgment going inside us.
If we can stop beating ourselves up for every little mistake, maybe we'd have more patience for ourselves and everyone else.
We're all just trying to figure things out. We're all human. And when we remember that, it makes it easier to connect with each other.
It's like instead of judging, we can be curious. When someone does something we don't understand, we can ask ourselves, well, why did they do that? What's their story?
Everyone's going through something. We never know the whole story. Sometimes the best thing we can do is just listen. No judgment. Just be there for them.
It's not always easy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But when we treat ourselves and others with compassion, it feels like something bigger than us. It's like we're tapping into something really special.
It's like we're actually healing that separation. We're connecting with each other. And I think that's what this source is trying to tell us.
This deep dive has really got me thinking. I'm going to have to go back and read that source again.
I think that's a good sign. It means it really made you think.
And for everyone listening, if you're wrestling with these ideas too, just remember, we have a choice. We can listen to that voice that judges and divides, or we can choose compassion, understanding, and look for that spark of the divine in ourselves and everyone around us. It's something we have to work at, but it's worth it.
Have you ever wrestled with those really big questions? Like, what's it all about? Where do we fit into all of this? You know, good, evil, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Well, the source material we're diving into today, it really digs into those questions. Honestly, it's pretty intense stuff.
It is. And what I find interesting is like how it tackles this idea of evil. It doesn't, go the typical route asking who is Satan and all that.
Right.
It flips it. It turns it inward and asks us about like, where do our allegiances lie? What are the choices we're making?
It's true. It's like, it's less about pointing a finger at some external evil force.
Right.
And more about, like you said, looking inward, kind of saying, hey, wait a second, maybe we have some responsibility here too.
It's about personal accountability.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to define evil in some abstract way.
Right, exactly.
It makes it personal, right? It says, okay, it's not just about like knowing who the bad guy is. It's about the choices we're making day to day.
And that whole idea of choice, that seems to be like at the core of what this is all about. Like it talks about this pull between, reaching for the light, right, versus getting kind of like seduced by, I think it uses the phrase, the allure of the world.
Yeah, it's like that classic struggle, right?
Right. It's like we all know what we should be doing, but then there's like this other stuff that's maybe a little more tempting.
Exactly. It's like this tension, right? It's that human experience of trying to like, be good, strive for good, but then there's all these other things that are kind of pulling us in different directions.
And I think the source material does a good job of like not making it so black and white, right?
Yeah.
It's not just like you're either good or you're bad.
Yeah, it's not that simple.
Right. It's more nuanced, like you said.
Yeah, and it recognizes that our decisions, they're not made in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Right? There's a million things feeding into them.
It's true. And speaking of, decisions and paths, this is one phrase that I have to ask you about because it really made me stop.
Okay.
It talks about a divine invitation to righteousness. What do you make of that?
It's a powerful phrase, isn't it?
It is.
Because it, like, suggests that we have a say in all this, right? It's not like we're just along for the ride.
Right.
It's more like, hey, here's an invitation. You can choose to accept it. You can choose to align yourself with something bigger.
So it's a call to action almost.
That's how I see it, yeah.
Not just like a passive, okay, this is happening to me, but okay, wait, I can actually do something.
Exactly. And it's not a one-time offer, right? It's like this constant invitation that's always there.
It's always there.
Every moment, every choice, it's a chance to, like, realign ourselves with that invitation.
And that brings us back to that idea of choices having consequences.
Right, because if every moment is a chance to choose,
Right.
then those choices, they have to ripple out, right?
They have to have some sort of impact, yeah.
It's like that butterfly effect.
Right.
Even a small decision can have huge consequences that we might not even realize.
Okay, there's this other part, I got to be honest, it kind of threw me for a loop.
Okay.
It's this analogy, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It talks about clay that questions its maker.
Ah, yeah, that's a powerful image.
It is, but I'm not sure I totally get it.
Well, we often hear about, like, having blind faith, right? But
Yeah.
this image of clay questioning the one who made it, it suggests, like, a different kind of relationship.
Okay.
It's saying maybe it's okay to question, to doubt.
Right.
Even when it comes to, big, important things.
Yeah, it's like those questions, maybe they're not necessarily a sign of disrespect,
Exactly.
but more like a way of trying to figure out where we fit in.
Yeah, like trying to make sense of it all.
And the source material, it seems like it's ultimately urging us to embrace all of that. The good, the bad, the questions. Yeah.
Right. It's saying, hey, step into your power. You have the ability to make choices that align with righteousness.
It's a pretty powerful message, honestly.
It is. It's like, it's a call to action, right?
Right.
To really examine our lives, to make conscious choices, and to remember that we have the ability to make a difference.
So it's a journey, this whole thing, trying to figure out who we are and where we fit into everything.
Always a journey, right?
And I think what I'm taking away from this is it's not about like reaching some final destination.
Right, right.
It's about what we learn along the way.
It's the journey itself.
Yeah. So here's something for everyone to think about. If every single moment is a chance to choose light over darkness, what choice will you make today?